The year was 1928. An archaeologist, Julio Tello, arrived in Peru. What he's interested in lies underneath the sandy lands of Peru. He believes that it was only a matter of time before a long-lost treasure would be found, and his name will be propelled into the history books forever. What he didn't anticipate, however, was just what he actually would discover. Julio came across an ancient burial ground with hundreds of remains. Typical enough. Archaeologists find dead human bones from millennia ago all the time. Julio pushed the dirt further away from the skulls, and a bit more. And then a bit more. This is what they found. Although the body of the skeletons looked normal enough, the skulls weren't normal. Because the skulls were elongated. It's much bigger than the skulls of normal human beings. If you aren't sure what a normal skull looks like, here is a picture for reference. The appearance of the skulls gave birth to multiple theories as to who the skulls belonged to. Some believe that the skulls belong to a subspecies of humans that were extraordinarily intelligent, and that their records have been lost to time. Another theory proposes that the skulls may have been extraterrestrial in origin. Perhaps they weren't humans at all. They believe that it's possible an advanced race of ancient aliens may have arrived on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago, to teach humans valuable knowledge of construction and crop cultivation, and that the remains belong to an early group of aliens. After all, it was not easy to deliver such a sophisticated irrigation system under such scorching sun in the middle of nowhere. Some of the most intricate textile designs in the ancient world were also found to have been made by the Paracas people. Those who believe in theory are wondering if aliens were here to teach some skills to humans, and if they left their legacy and influence behind. Lastly, they had pretty advanced medical knowledge at the time. They even performed brain surgery on some of their people. Although not all the surgeries were successful. Most of them probably didn't survive. And sometimes the surgeries were not needed at all. It was done to ward off bad spirits that they thought may have been causing them headaches. But Peru isn't the only place where elongated skulls have been found. In fact, elongated skulls have been found all over the world. In Asia, South America, Europe, and Africa. Elongated skulls have been around since before written history. It's seen on the walls of ancient Egypt. At one point, it may not have been weird to see a human with a huge head walking around. The earliest record of an elongated head sighting was from Hesiod, an ancient Greek poet. He talked about a group of humans with an elongated head called macrocephaly, which translates to the big-head ones. That doesn't sound like a compliment today, but it was not a form of name-calling back in those days. The poem was written between 750 to 650 BC. The most scientific explanation, however, was a boring one. The elongated skulls belonged to the ancient Paracas people who called the area home 3,000 years ago. And it has nothing to do with aliens. The strange shape of the skull was done using artificial cranial deformation. They bind newborn skulls tightly and mold the skull with planks of wood to create the elongated effect. Some cultures use clothes to achieve similar looks. Newborn skulls haven't been completely fused yet. Humans have evolved this way so that newborns can fit relatively easily through the birth canal. This unfused skull also makes it easy to mold into specific shapes you desire. It would usually take between 6 months to a few years for the process to complete. The reason why anyone would want to deform their child's head like that could be due to various reasons. One reason is that head binding is a practice restricted to nobility in many ancient cultures. It's pretty easy to recognize a person with a weirdly shaped skull, and the presence of such a figure in ancient times tend to command respect. Sometimes, an entire society would participate in head binding, rather than it being restricted to the nobility of one society. This theory suggests that head binding was a way for people to create a unique physical characteristic that set them apart from neighboring societies. By altering the shape of their skulls, people could distinguish themselves and create a sense of cultural identity. This was particularly common in ancient Mesoamerica, where the Mayans, Olmecs, and other cultures practiced head binding to varying degrees. Another theory suggests that elongated skulls were a sign of higher intelligence or spiritual power, and therefore, they were highly valued. This practice was particularly common in ancient Peru, where the Paracas culture created some of the most elaborate and extreme examples of head binding. In some cultures, elongated skulls were believed to resemble the gods or deities. By altering their skulls, people could become closer to the divine. The practice of head binding was particularly common in ancient Egypt, where the pharaohs and their families were believed to be descended from the gods. The practice was also present in the Andean cultures of South America, where the Inca Empire believed that the god Viracocha had an elongated head. There had also been beliefs that elongating one's brain would make them smarter. Some cultures believed that head binding could prevent headaches or improve vision. It was also a way to prove one's strength and resilience, as it could be a painful and time-consuming process. However, there is no scientific evidence that head binding produces any health benefits or intelligence-enhancing potential. In fact, it may do the opposite. It could cause the brain to lose certain functions if it's pressed up against the skull too much in certain areas. So please do not practice head binding on your child or any baby entrusted to you. You may be surprised to learn that elongated heads are thought to have been a sign of beauty. Unibrow in ancient Greece, blackened teeth from ancient Japan, to foot binding in ancient China, were all classic signs of beauty in certain cultures at one point. These are clues that beauty standards do change with time. In the Chinookan culture of the Pacific Northwest, head flattening was practiced as a way to achieve a desirable physical appearance. Similarly, in the Nayarit culture of ancient Mexico, it was believed that an elongated skull was a sign of beauty and desirability. In these cultures, individuals who underwent head binding may have been seen as more attractive and eligible for marriage or other social opportunities. Times have changed and those beauty standards have also changed, and with time, today's beauty standards would change as well. What we think is beautiful today may be considered ugly in the future. And those elongated heads? Just keep an open mind. It was a different time. However, not all cultures viewed elongated skulls as beautiful or desirable. In some societies, head binding was seen as a painful and difficult process, and individuals who had elongated skulls were stigmatized or seen as outsiders. In modern time, some people are firm believers that the elongated skulls were ancient civilizations' attempts at copying the looks of gods, and that the gods were aliens visiting Earth with advanced aircrafts. It may seem like a stretch, because there is no evidence that aliens actually did visit Earth in the ancient past. Although it is not entirely out of the realm of possibility. Other people believe that those who practiced head binding in the past were trying to emulate the looks of jaguar, which were considered a symbol of power and strength during the time when humans may have been hunted by these wild beasts. These wild beasts would have been equally feared and respected. To some, this theory of how the practice of head binding occurs is the most plausible. It's unknown where the practice originated from, but there have been a few theories. The origins of head binding, also known as cranial deformation, are difficult to trace because the practice dates back to ancient times and was practiced in various cultures around the world. However, it's generally believed that the practice originated independently in different parts of the world and may have served different cultural or social purposes depending on the region. One of the earliest known examples of head binding dates back to ancient Egypt, where some members of the royal family and nobility practiced head binding to create elongated skulls. This practice is believed to have begun around 3000 BCE and continued until the end of the Pharaonic era in 332 BCE. Head binding was also practiced in ancient Mesoamerica, particularly by the Mayan and Olmec cultures in present-day Mexico and Central America. In these cultures, head binding was associated with the ruling class and was used to differentiate social status. The Paracas culture in Peru also practiced head binding, and some of the most extreme examples of elongated skulls have been found among their archaeological sites. The Paracas culture lived along the southern coast of Peru from around 800 BCE to 100 BCE. Head binding was also practiced in some Native American cultures, such as the Chinookan people of the Pacific Northwest and the Nayarit culture of ancient Mexico. Interestingly, the practice of head binding may have started in Egypt not out of deliberate attempts, but due to medical conditions. There is a medical anomaly called macrocephaly, where the sufferer has enlarged-looking skulls. Some of the mummies being studied by scientists have signs of macrocephaly. Is it possible that at least in ancient Egypt, the practice of head binding started as an attempt to emulate a nobility's medical condition? Royalties in ancient Egypt were considered godlike, or even gods themselves. Assuming that a nobility was sick somehow was inappropriate. Instead, the appropriate response would be to view his or her enlarged head as a sign of godlike quality. There could be many different reasons why head binding practice started in various cultures across history, and they could all have been an independent rise of each other. But there are also those who believe that head binding was evidence of just how much cultural exchange there had been in ancient times across vast distances. Overall, the practice of head binding provides a glimpse into the complex and varied cultural practices of ancient societies. While the practice may seem unusual or even extreme by modern standards, it was a way of life for many, and today, we can study the remnant of what they left behind as a way to honor them in death. Thanks for watching until the end.